Greetings, greetings, greetings. You are now tuned into the vault. Trust Christian, know nothing, control everything. Just want to thank you for tuning in live, listening to replay. Always appreciate everybody that tunes in the live or tunes in into the replay. We do quite a few pop-up random live stream podcasts randomly throughout the week. But if you all want to tune into the more consistent episodes, you all can feel free to tune in Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Vault. Once again, that's Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Vault. We have specific topics that we talk about every single week. But today we're going to talk about the Vault episode 257, Language of Trust Funds, AUM, which stands for Assets Under Management. So we appreciate everybody that tunes in live or listening to this replay. This is the Vault episode 257, Language of Trust Funds, AUM, which stands for Assets Under Management. And so today we really wanted to talk about language of trust funds because this is it's almost like a hidden language, ladies and gentlemen. But this language system pervades all of and most people's lifestyles, which is assets under management. You literally focused on growing assets and things of that nature. And so we just wanted to talk about that today because there's so many people that reach out to the vault. They don't have a sound financial education, but then there are people that do have businesses. There are people that are investors, that are traders. They call themselves day traders and things of that nature. And we really wanted to talk to people to talk to them about assets under management today because that's what it's all about, ladies and gentlemen. We did an episode recently about international IMF. What is that? Individual master file, IMF, individual master file versus assets under management or AUM, assets under management. And the reason why we did that episode is because a lot of people have not kept track of the numbers throughout their life for their various ventures, their various successes, and things of that nature. And we just wanted to talk about that because it's so essential to be looking at what do you have as an asset on the books, what do you have as a liability on the books, and actually knowing that language. So many trustees, and this is for the trustees because people come to the vault and they think that they really got ahead by coming to the vault and they're like, oh, I'm in a training and that's it. Well, just because you enroll in a trustee training does not mean you have a full grasp of the language. And we all understand it as a continuing education program. The vault's private trustee training is a continuing education program for trustees. And the reason why we wanted to talk about specifically language of trust funds, assets under management or AUM, is because there is a language barrier in the continuing education program. The language barrier comes down to, are you familiar with the term asset? Are you familiar with the term liability? Are you really familiar with what is an asset, what is a liability, and how to manage that? See, when we talk about trust funds, ladies and gentlemen, we're actually talking about growing assets. People say, well, should I be dealing with a trust or a trust fund if I don't have any assets? One of the mentors said, unless you're poverty stricken, yes, you should be learning that language. So people say, well, where can I go to learn that language, Trust Christian? Ladies and gentlemen, you can go learn that language through a Black's Law Dictionary. You can learn that through a Barron's Financial Dictionary. You can learn that through a Bouvier's Dictionary, because these are the hidden languages of the financial elite. When you talk about having a good lawyer, how can you hire a good lawyer if you don't know how to communicate with the lawyer in legal terms? Think about it. How many people can speak legalese? See, this is the language of a trust fund. You have to be able to speak legalese. You have to know what is a bull market, what is a bear market. These are financial terms that if you ask the average person, they will say, I don't know. You have to be able to speak what is GDP, what is the gross domestic product. You are not going to be able to grow a fund if you're not familiar with the financial environment that you're in. How can you grow from a position of where you are to where you want to go if you're not familiar with the language of finance. Now, a lot of people, they go to school and they get finance degrees. We'll agree with that. But how many people are able to manage a trust fund even with a finance degree? Not too many. There are many that go to school, they just get a degree, and they're not utilizing that in a trust fund. So when we talk about trust funds, we get back to what the vault teaches. We get back to what the vault trains you in. First, you have to protect assets. That's a part of a trust fund. Then you have to preserve the assets. You have to hedge out risk. You can't grow from a position of wealth if you're not hedging out risk. So you preserve the wealth. You preserve it before you go out and take more money with it. You know, people say, oh, it takes money to make money. It does. But are you protecting the money before you try to go out and grow it? Are you preserving the money? Various forms of insurance. Who's the money in most trust funds? You're the brain of the operation as the fund manager. If you're the brains of the operation as a fund manager, why don't most trustees that come to the vault have key man insurance on themselves? Or why doesn't the trust have key man insurance so it can replace them in the fund for future management? Why is that the same way with most people in businesses? Because they haven't been trained in this information. So let's get to when you get through protecting, preserving, then we can get back to growing the assets. Growing the assets. Okay, not only do we grow the assets, what happens when it's time for you to put a successor in place? Do you have a succession plan as the trust fund manager? Does the trust have a succession plan for you as the asset manager? The risk manager? Is that in place? Because most people die without a will. So they die intestate. Most people die with a will, but they don't die with a trust fund. But this is an education that you get when you go through the private trustee training program, is you learn the language of trust funds, AUM, the assets under management conversation, because you learn that you have to have a risk tolerance. You have to learn how to be agnostic towards the business that you're doing. People say, oh, I want to do business that I love. I want to do the business that I love. But are you looking at this objectively? Are you looking at it from an outside source? See, that's what the vault provides. It provides management consulting so you can manage the assets and also manage your language. See, when you're a true asset manager, the assets are not yours. When you're a true asset manager, you're growing other people's assets, not just your own. So many people say, oh, well, I'm a trader. But are you trading other people's assets, which is money? No. Then you're not a real trader. You're not a professional. Professionals, they trade other people's money. It's assets under management. It's OPM. The banks trading people's money through sole prop traders. Not sole prop traders, prop traders. When you give your money over to a bank, they have someone on the other side that's actually trading the money at the bank. This is a fact. Maybe not all banks, credit union style banks, but most traditional banks, investment banks, that's what they're doing. They're investing your money, creating leverage. But this is the language of trust funds. You learn how to manage assets. You learn how to manage risk. In the private trustee training program, you learn how to manage risk. If you're not able to manage risk, ladies and gentlemen, trusteeship's not for you. It's not about just protecting your name. Oh, we got to protect our name and put everything inside of a trust. And, we're going to put everything inside of a trust. And, we're going to, put our birth certificate in there and we're going to be fine. Ladies and gentlemen, is the trust in your name? How many people contact the vault, literally say, oh, I created a trust. Okay, that's fair. But the trust is in their name. See, when you learn about trust funds, you don't own anything. You control it. So you never want anything to be tied to you personally. So you would never have the fund in your name. Most quality trustees don't have assets in their name. So they wouldn't have the fund in their name. See, the language of trusteeship is not I have, me and my. It's we. It's the. It's a. It's very objective. It's very third party. Why? Because anything you own, you can have taxed or sued from you. The language of trusteeship, the language of trust funds, assets under management, says we don't own the assets. So we wouldn't go put our birth certificate in a trust that we created. See, the language of trust funds, assets under management, it's all about collaboration and partnership. It's all about education. What do you think endowments are at colleges? Endowments at colleges are assets that are being managed by an asset manager. The asset manager manages assets so the college doesn't go under. It's the same thing for the libraries. What about the government? Isn't the government supposed to be managing the Social Security Administration Trust? How are they showing themselves approved about the assets that they have under management? Do they speak asset under management language? Or are they speaking where the beneficiaries, which are the recipients of SSI insurance, the recipients, are they speaking to those people to keep them dependent? That's what's going on. Assets under management comes through having better and better and better education, ladies and gentlemen. Language of trust funds is knowing how to communicate with bankers, knowing how to communicate with lawyers, knowing how to communicate with accountants, knowing how to communicate with industry experts. That's the language of trust funds, ladies and gentlemen. And so many people, they come to the vault and we see that they're not putting enough time in with the words. You got to put the time in with the words. Because we had a trustee come to us recently and they were like, well, how do we deal with a situation with a vehicle, a company vehicle, or a company house, or things of that nature? How do we deal with that? And they said because what they got reported from the Alphabet Boys was control and enjoyment. So what do we tell the trustee? You need to go find out what enjoyment means in legal terms, in legalese. Why? Because it doesn't mean the same thing as what you think in the common colloquial sense. And they went back and they did their research and they came back and they said, you're right, Trust Christian. Why? Because you're doing business as a trustee. It's important for you to know the language, the environment that you're in. Bottom line, none of the words mean the same on the public side as they do the private side. The private side is the law. Because a lot of people went through public school and they don't have a sound financial education. See, there's good debt and there's bad debt. But how many people know what good debt is? Most people just associate debt with negative. Well, when you're dealing with assets under management, that might be critical in the preservation stage. Loans might be taken out in the preservation stage to balance the books at the end of the year. But how many people know that? How many people know that you can acquire debt? Trust funds acquire debt so they can keep growing it from a positive cash flow position. Well, they know you can buy debt, Trust Christian. Right. Because that information is not taught on the public side. It's taught in private trustee training at the vault. It's taught through private sources of trusteeship. Bottom line. So people have a decision that they have to make. Are you going to take a risk on yourself and continue your education? Or are people going to be willfully ignorant? Are people so conditioned to be poor, are so conditioned to be broke, that they don't learn the language of trusteeship, but they say that they're managing trust funds? We get people all the time, oh, Trust Christian, we learned all this information just by listening to the YouTube channel, but we never heard you go through the trustee training program. Where'd you get your education from? Did you go to a college? Because guess what? College is a controlled knowledge environment. All degrees aren't created the same. You can go to one school, one degree might have a better teacher, a better curriculum. That's why private trustee training has taken its place among the elite, because we provide a case by case base education. It's for you and where you are. But the language is something we all start out with. The language is something you will always start out with. And every trustee has to get a Black's Law Dictionary minimum. They can go get a Barron's. They can go get a Bouvier's. We encourage them to read not even just financial magazines, but go through cases and actually look at words that they're reading. See, trusteeship is about assets under management. So if that's the case, you got to know the language. You got to be able to manage assets properly, because your language is going to open you up to doors, rooms, and people. And when you can speak the language properly, you can have an intelligent financial education conversation with the right people. This is where we are, ladies and gentlemen. The language is everything. If you're listening to the vault, you can go grab those dictionaries. And then you can still enroll into the vault. But every trustee is required to get those books. It's like law school. You're required to get the legal dictionary. When you come through trustee training, you're required to get the legal dictionary. Why? Because it's you learning the language. Bottom line. Are you going to learn the language? That's what it's about. Because then you know, I don't want to do anything personally. I want to do everything through business. It's always business. It's never personal. Always. Because when you go look up what's a personal trust, when you go look up what a personal business is, there's no benefit to have those. Separate your business wealth from your family wealth. How many people are willing to do that, though? Because they don't know the language. People are handicapped by not knowing the language, ladies and gentlemen, the words. And we're here to share with you that as soon as you learn those words, as soon as you learn the education, the language, you'll be able to move forward in business very successfully, very efficiently. Bottom line. But most people aren't. Appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listening to the replay. Feel free to type into the chat where you're listening from. We're going to stay on a couple more seconds. Feel free to type into the chat, any questions that you may have about the language of trust funds, AUM, assets under management. This is The Vault. This is Trust Christian. Always appreciate you all for tuning in. Feel free to type into the chat. Otherwise, we appreciate you all, and you all enjoyed the episode. Feel free to pass it along. Make sure you get those dictionaries. Look forward to hearing from you in trustee training. We look forward to you all doubling down on your education as your life depends on it. Appreciate you all. Peace.